Okay, so welcome. I would like to tell you about how I started on this part of thinking about freedom and implementing it into my own life. And when I spoke to my friend, Juraj Karpiš, who is also here, and he'll have a talk about money, he told me about kind of a path to that people who realize how these things work, how markets work, how the market forces interact, and so on, how most people perceive it. I tried to ask him about this a few weeks back, and he didn't remember what he told me. So I kind of reconstructed my own path, and I think the last part so far is positive libertarianism, which I'm going to tell you about. So, tin tin. So, okay. So first, we are dissatisfied with the current state. Some people have problems with how education works, justice, police, drug laws, and all these things. And usually the first reaction of most people is, let's fix the state. So let's elect some politicians. They will take care of our problems for us. So this is the basic atavistic state of mind, that we are going to campaign and, call politicians, sign petitions, and so on, and we will fix what is out there. Then some people go to the next step, and they realize that it can't be fixed because it's a rigged game from the beginning. And they start learning about the markets, about alternative ways to fixing all these problems. And they realize that market actors solve these problems. So there are a lot of voluntary solutions to all the problems, including education, justice, and all these other things. So they read things like Machinery of Freedom or other interesting books that explain how these market forces could work and could provide these services that are normally right now provided by states. So they realize that it's a beautiful thing and they want to tell everyone about it. So they become kind of preachers, and they, at a pub and during conversations, they explain how this all could magically work and solve all these problems. And then, so that's the everyone should understand its logical phase. And then they realize that most people don't understand, and even more people don't care at all about what you're telling them. So this is this state of despair, this like blackness, like no one understands me, and they still want to fix the state, and it can't be done, and it's like this very sad part of this path. And then we a lot of us understand that we can actually do a lot of things to change the world, one of which is creating places like this where things are not solved by the state and they're solved by people interacting in smaller communities, educating each other, and so on. And the final step is that a lot of us come into a place like this, and we start saying how things should work in parallel police, what the relations should be about. And I think the most important path is figuring out what you can do yourself first to attain more freedom, and then you can slowly do it with other people, then grow to some larger groups, and maybe fix the world like that. So I think the most important realization is that our freedom lies between some stimulus and our our response, our power, how we respond to things around us. So most people say, let's say, healthcare doesn't work, and yes, that's true. The healthcare system is broken, but our freedom lies in how we react to that. So if we say, okay, healthcare system doesn't work, but I have a problem, I can look for a doctor. They don't have to be in this country. I can go. The world is big. I can go anywhere and find a solution. So I think the most freedom that we have right now is hidden between the stimulus and our response, which is said in this nice quote that I really like. So some things, first of all, most things don't want liberty. Most people don't want liberty or freedom. They're either too afraid or too spoiled. They mostly seek comfort and not liberty. And a lot of people who did a few of those steps that I showed in the beginning realized that forcing liberty on other people is not going to work if they don't care about it. So we shouldn't do that. The nice thing is that the standard democratic or autocratic state even is really good at controlling masses of people. But if you are a niche weirdo like us, it's very difficult for them. So please be a niche weirdo and don't be like everyone else. Also, this answer that the market will solve things is a myth, because the market doesn't exist. It's just people interacting. So if there are no people doing anything, then the market will not solve your problems, because you have to find people that do that. I think the really nice analogy is something that we in IT call Moore's law, which says that let's say the number of transistors per square centimeter or something like that will double every 18 months or something like that. And people kind of, because it's called Moore's law, people think it's a natural law. But if you think about it, it only works because there are people that are actually developing those CPUs, and they're actually doing research. They're motivated by market forces. But if those researchers and engineers didn't do their job, there would be no Moore's law. So it's the same with market. You can't just say, okay, I'm waiting and the market will solve it for me, because it won't. If there are no providers on the market, then you're out of luck. So changing market will solve this to mean other people is the first step, and then you can think about if you can't be one of those other people and actually solve some problems yourself. So also, most of our interactions are already state-free. So if you really think about it, when you come into real interaction with a state, it's very rare. Like maybe when you're stopped by a cop while you're driving a car, or where you cross borders, that's your interactions with the state. But I think, or my state of mind is that we are already mostly free, and it's only a really small minority when we have to actually interact with any kind of government. So if you realize from the moment you wake up in the morning how many things are actually interactions with state and global rules of the society, it's not that many. So I also don't think that the reason that, for example, we are not just randomly killed on the street or robbed, it's not because there are cops standing there, because police is usually not standing there. They usually come after the fact and document. They take pictures and ask you what happened, but they don't actually really prevent the crime. So the reason that you are not killed on the street is that most people don't think it's a good idea to just kill random people. So that's also good news. Also, what I like to tell people is don't play a victim and don't be a victim. So it's usually we see this with any minority groups, from feminists to let's say immigrants and so on. They kind of focus too much on the fact that they're victim and they're disadvantaged by something. And my suggestion is to take all these niche weirdo aspects of yourself and use them as your strengths. So I think it is much more effective to build on your strengths than to try to fix all your flaws. And of course, it's much better than trying to change the society to turn you from a victim to some kind of equal person or something like that. So I suggest be proud, have a high self-esteem about who you really are, and if you come into a state of mind where you think that you're a victim, then get rid of it, because it won't help you. Okay. This is a very difficult thing to do in practice, but I'm going to mention it anyway. In nature, there are several types of people, or also apes and some other animals that build hierarchies. We all know about the alpha beta. So beta is usually a follower. So if you love freedom, you probably don't want to be a beta. So a lot of us don't want to have a boss or belong to a hierarchy where we have to conform to someone else's ideas, especially if they want to force their ideas upon us. I would also suggest that being an alpha is not such a good idea either. I don't like this position at all, and I like to avoid all situations when someone tries to consider me their boss or get rid of their responsibility and let me make the decision. So this is a really hard thing to do for a lot of people, because most people enjoy when others ask them about their opinions and about what they should do and so on. So consciously thinking about becoming a gamma, which is neither a leader nor a follower, but something I call a doer or a creator. I think it's a very rare variant, so probably not a lot of us want to be in this position. It might be genetic, we don't know yet, but there are some indications that that's the case. And I suggest, because it's a very interesting and long topic, I suggest reading Ricardo Semler's 7-Day Weekend. It's a really good book about a big company that has, I think, 3,000 employees, and they got rid of the hierarchy structure. So, and this is the owner of the company, and he's explaining how they did it. So if you need help in resisting the temptation of being an alpha, this is a really good read. And of course, there is no need to do this in all cases. So when you go to a doctor and you clearly know that they know more about your health than you do, then you can just follow them. You don't need to do it 24/7, but it's nice to think about it. So what should we do? There are situations where we want more freedom. So we identify that. We ask ourselves, what do people that have that freedom do differently? It might be that they're just living in another country or something else. One really nice question is, what would you do if there was no state? So there are these questions. If there are no like a generic rules of society that solve this problem, what would you do? Like if someone robbed you and there was no police and no courts, what would you do? Would you go and beat them up, or would you call your friends and tell what happened and so on? So that's a really nice question, because it might give you some ideas what you could do. Then you just plan, implement, share the ideas with friends, and if it works, then you can become the market and share it with the world and maybe make some money on it. So that's the general framework, and I'm going to show you a few of those. They won't all have all the pieces, so so we save some time. But one of the first was software. I have a program, but I don't know what it does. I need to change it somehow, and it's a problem because I don't have the source code. So that's how the open source movement was born. What people do, they publish their code, they write on the web, and they basically rewrite all the software they want to use to have control what is happening with the software. Without the state, no one would centrally enforce copyright, but this doesn't help you much in this case. And what you can do is use code that is out there. You can build on that. You can build some more software, modify it, and so on. Then you can tell your friends, and when you tell your friends, maybe even create a hackerspace, then people start working on the code, and it starts growing and growing, and there will be much more code that makes you and everyone else more free. So that's one option. And if you see those arrows, it refers to some other talks that talk about these topics. Hopefully, I didn't see all them yet. So if you want to learn more, I refer you to some talks. So, for example, marriage. So, for example, there are people who want to arrange a different kind of relationship, maybe a gay relationship, maybe a relationship with more people. And they want it for many reasons, like health reasons, inheritance, arranging kids, changing the name, and so on. So that's the problem, that they want to get recognition. Of course, most people would campaign for gay marriages and later maybe polyamorous relationships that are supported by the state. But people can either get married elsewhere where it's allowed, or they can create private agreement. They can just write a contract that says, okay, this is what happens when we split. This is how we want to arrange what happens if someone is in a coma, or these healthcare concerns. You can easily legally change your name without getting married. You just go to the proper office and say that you want to change your surname to whatever you want, basically. And then if you go through all this, you can help us that want to live in standard marriages too, so we don't have to talk to some state bureaucrats that have the monopoly in marrying us, and we can also use these private contracts. So make sure to see Alexa's talk today at 4 p.m. and on Sunday at 6 p.m. Loss of financial privacy is something that this Congress is more or less about. It is mainly the regulations, OECD, CRS, FATCA, and other regulations killed banking secrecy. So basically, there are state bureaucrats that know how much money you have on your bank accounts, how much interest, capital gains, and dividends you earned. So one of the things you can do is switch to cryptos, of course, and you will definitely learn about it here. And also tell others that it's perfectly okay to have financial privacy. I'm really against financial transparency. I think how much I earn and how much I own is no one else's business than mine. If I don't want to tell anyone, then I should be able not to. So I think the part about spreading it around is actually telling other people that it's completely okay, that we don't need to live in a world where all our private matters are made public. So I will have a talk about saving in cryptocurrencies on Sunday, and you can also see the topics from the program from the link that Pavel shared with you. Mass surveillance, there will be also a talk at 4 p.m. about this, but basically the state agencies and also private actors, they track us, they listen to our private conversations and communications. The solution is to always encrypt everything, even the shopping list for groceries that I send Janka or she sends me. We use Signal or Threema, and we encrypt everything. So it's just much easier if you don't have to think about what to encrypt and what not to encrypt. Just encrypt everything and that's it. And of course, this all relies on the network effect. So the more people that use these tools, the more useful it is. So we really have to act. It's not about, reading a book and thinking, oh, this is great, we can now have this freedom, or the market will solve this in 20 years because someone will start a private insurance agency or something like that. We have to actually do some things. I really like the Harry Brown's version of libertarianism, which is anti-political to the core. And there was a phrase called browning out in the 70s, and it meant leaving political or ideological activism behind and seeking freedom in an unfree world, which is the title of his book, Seeking Freedom in an Unfree World, by yourself, for yourself, in your private realm, not in the public scrum of ideas or politics. And I really like that he would answer letters to a reader requesting advice with just one sentence: do whatever you think is best. So I think this is the universal answer. So think what is best to do, not what is the best philosophy, but what should you actually do. So I have few more of these, depending on how much time we have. A lot of us think that taxation is immoral. So what you can do is, first you can lower your taxable income. So that means maybe produce less or produce in tax havens, change your private or corporate tax residency. You can also become a permanent traveler, so you avoid your residency. There are many things that you can do. You should also do business with people who do the same, because then you can actually build a network of companies. You know that when you trade with others, then the wealth of everyone is increased. So it's not only about changing your taxable income, but you can actually do that with other people. Also give moral support to everyone doing it. I think that avoiding taxes shouldn't be a stigma that we whisper about. It's a normal thing. And you should also realize that if we think that the state is immoral, then people who pay taxes are financing organized crime. Here, one very important note: please do it legally. Do not end up in prison. There are legal ways to do this, and it's no good if you end up in prison. Relationships, also part about marriage. Normal relationships are not for everyone, and now we live in times where we can choose alternatives and or even invent our own, and we can help others. So also Alexa's talk will be about this. Justice systems, we can create groups of people who provide justice to each other. When some people have conflict, they all want to resolve the conflict, and there are other ways than just suing everyone or something like that. So there will be some more talks about this one as well. You should enforce contracts in your social group and help people build reputation systems and so on. So that's justice. I think that ultimate freedom is freedom about our inner world. So it is more important how we feel from inside than like what country we live in and what laws we use and what laws are valid and accepted. So I think building our self-esteem and not worrying if other people don't get it. Also, other people have maybe more important things in their lives. It's not that everyone is, focused on freedom. There, some people want to save starving animals, and that's okay. So, don't just preach to everyone and work on your. Also, for a lot of people, including ourselves, freedom can be scary. So I think the fear is also state's tactic, their strategy. So we need to work with that. My friend John Butcher is a proponent of radical individualism. So find what you really want, who you really are, find the way that you want to do things, and have respectful disregard for other people's opinions and ideas. So if you make your mind and if you say, okay, this is the way I want to do it, don't care about what your grandparents' friends would think about that. It doesn't matter at all. So hack everything. Hack everything is my idea as a hacker, and as Tomáš said, I like to do biohacking and hacking all other things. So, and hacking is basically asking yourself a question: what would you want to do about something, and how could you do things differently? So I'll skip this one. Public school system, there will be a lot of things about education. I really recommend these 3 talks as well. So you can unschool, homeschool, you can actually skip university and just learn online. I think in education we have a perfect communist utopia because most information is on the internet and it's for free. So these days you can really learn anything you want from the internet, and if you don't really need a degree, then it's the thing. I will skip this one, and we can have time for questions. If you want to check the slides, the link works and it will stay there. So thank you very much, and there's some time for questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Juraj, for a very inspirational speech. And now I would like to ask you if you have any questions. Would you like to ask? Okay, first question.
Do you see anything with libertarianism with the Estonian e-residency program? Like, do you know anything about that?
I know about Estonian e-residency. Yeah, it's a way for people to create a European Union company easily. That's one of the uses of the system. So there are a lot of people who actually use it to increase their freedom. I know that there are a lot of people from countries that have some difficulties in doing business. There are a lot of people from Turkey, for example, that want to do business with European companies, and they use this to start a company. So I'm not like it's not a solution for everything, but I think it's good that this option is out there, and it lowers the barrier of trade, basically. That's my take. Of course, you can also legally sign documents, publish, notarize them on the blockchain, and do all these other things. But I can do that with my normal ID card as well. So,
thank you.
Yeah, I think there are some uses for that.
So there are some efforts, like last few years, especially after Bitcoin, to establish internet states, like alternative states, which are online states, like BitNation, which is not so advanced and stuff like that. I don't know if you've heard anything of it or know one of those which you recommend. How is it related to libertarianism?
If someone asks me if I want to have internet states or internet nation, I personally don't, because I don't need to be a member of something like that. It's a too big community for me. But the real question is what kind of services they provide and what problems they solve. So, for example, BitNations has at least a notary service for blockchains, which is nice, and you can use it right now. My perception about this is more that they are service providers and they provide some services that states traditionally provide. So that's a good thing, and I hope they will work better in the future. But I'm not like, I don't think that we need something that is called a state. So my vision is that I would like to buy, insurance from one company, notary services from the other, and it doesn't need to be under a big umbrella of any project. But it's good that they do something.
Okay, other questions?
Why do you think that so many libertarians are from IT sector? Why is it?
I'm going to only speculate, but I think there are many libertarians everywhere, but basically internet is the decentralized realm, and we experienced a lot of not having state control. So things like, routing protocols and things that work on the internet. When you want to create a website, you don't need to ask permission and so on. So we understand that these things work, that the self-regulations can work. And of course, if anyone understood how blockchains work, then they see that they can solve a lot of these problems. So I think it's actually the experience from the internet, something that people call cyberspace. I hate that term, but I think that it's because they had this experience. I think it grew a lot more when people read Satoshi's paper about Bitcoin, and then they realized that you can actually build a permissionless monetary system. And then a lot of people start studying Austrian economics and so on. So that's what pushed me in even further in this area. So that's the story for me.
What projects are you working on currently, and what do you have planned for the future?
I am working on a very secret project that I can't tell you about, but it's going to be cool. And I'm also working on starting parallel police in Bratislava, where I live. So there will be another space from January next year. We already signed the rental agreement. So I invite you to Bratislava. There.
Yeah.
So thanks for the presentation. I actually have a follow-up on the earlier question. If I may, why do you think that almost all of the libertarians tend to be quite well of white men?
I don't know, because I live in Slovakia and all people tend to be white men or women, and I know that I know a lot of women libertarians. I don't know about a lot of other kinds of people, other weirdos, and other niches that I told about, simply because the place where I live is very homogeneous. So I don't know. I actually know a few libertarians from Africa and from other countries. So I don't think it's. I think that's the same question, that why the IT guys are mostly IT guys and not IT girls. So I don't know.
What do you think of other projects that try to do it from the state side, like trying to start their own country, like for libertarianism?
Go for it. Test other systems. It's. I think that one of the really good paths that we can try is decentralization. So actually creating smaller states, cutting them apart, even to the street level or house level. It's all secessions is good, and I think it is good because we can have positive examples. So if someone actually makes it and it works, then we can show that this is how it could work. I had a funny story. I was at the libertarian meetup in Singapore, and all of the attendees were expats, and there was only one local, and he was drunk, and he was very sad because he says that no one understands him because everyone thinks that Singapore is a libertarian utopia, that low taxes, everything works, and it's not actually the case, because you can buy chewing gum and stuff like that, but it's an example, also with Hong Kong, for example, where you can show, okay, see, these guys have low taxes and they're not starving. It's actually one of the most advanced countries in the world. So it's the same with these libertarian countries. I think if they make it work and they say, okay, we have a private police and honest financial system and all these other things, then we can show that it works. But also, I don't want to wait for someone to start a libertarian utopia, so I'm building one myself right now. So that's. I would say ladies first. No, it doesn't matter.
All right. So my question is, what are the top 3 things that you do as a positive libertarian that have the biggest impact in your life? Does that make sense?
Yes, sure. First of all, putting a large portion of my savings into cryptocurrencies. It's a very easy, actionable thing, and I'm really happy about the decision. Moving my working with healthcare professionals from other countries, not only from where I live, because I would like to have more up-to-date healthcare than 20 years old that we use over here. So that would be 2, and 3 is travel, and that actually changes my point of view, because I totally I can get rid of all the questions about politics, because when you travel 1,000 kilometers in any direction, it doesn't matter who is your prime minister in your own country and what is this law and what is that law. So just seeing how other people in other countries or in other communities arrange things. And it's also interesting because according to my philosophy, there are a lot of things that shouldn't work, and they do work if people arrange them. So, for example, in Bratislava, we have a bike sharing system that is totally voluntary. It's free. It's basically a communist utopia. So normally I would say this can't work, and it works because I saw it and I use it every day, and it works. So just having an open mind and travel helps with that. So I think that is very, very good hack that people should do.
Hi. I just wanted to ask, how do you see the role of the state in the near future or in the distant future? Do you think that with the rising cryptocurrencies being used, that there's a borderless society or borderless world on the horizon?
Yeah. I don't believe in revolutions. I think that what will happen will be similar to what happened with Rome. So with Rome, after it was basically non-functional, a lot of people didn't realize that for centuries. So I think for a lot of us, the states don't exist anymore. They're just a minor annoyance that we have to show them our passports and, you know, file one paper with taxes, and like we don't care about them at all. So I think it will be very different for different people. There are some people that still believe that they will get their retirement from the state. There are still some people that rely on the services, and for others it will be less. So I think that it won't be that the world will change. It is that we will change when we use these things like cryptocurrencies and all other blockchain services. We will actually live in a more decentralized world, but that doesn't mean that this will be the case for your neighbor who doesn't have any bitcoins, or actually they maybe don't care. They will just vote for the new mayor of the city because they promise nicer roads or something. So I don't think there is one general direction that this will go. I think it will be different for everyone.
Hi. So since you mentioned services from the state, how do you see this in the future? The services that we kind of need to share, like streetlights, hospitals, I don't know, things like that, and especially those in the area we don't live. Like, you travel, you go to the mountains, you'd like some streetlights there too, perhaps.
In the mountains? I prefer not to.
Not exactly in the top of the mountains, but in a village or things like that, you know, where you don't pay money, you live in a big city, you don't pay for...
I think it's the similar question to a question of a shopping center, which is a small city and they provide free toilets for everyone. I think, you know, if it's a small village, there are people who will live in that village, and it's much nicer if they will have streetlights. If they prefer not to have them, then they might not have them. So I don't have a solution for the whole world. Usually with hospitals, you can like... when I travel, 99% of time I'm a private paying customer of some hospital. So if something happens to me, and I'm even here in Czech Republic, I have my travel insurance. So I am a private customer of these. So I don't think that we need to have hospitals in remote places. Maybe it's cheaper to just transfer people there and have just very basic healthcare there. But I think it's not about my vision, how the world should look. It is how people who live in those areas want to arrange things. So I don't have a recipe for them. I truly don't.
Thank you. I'm wondering, in sort of a degree of immorality, how do you view large companies, Google, Facebook, Amazon, to mention a few, compared to the state?
I try not to judge other people, what they do. So I'm not so radical in hating them. I think they provide services for some people. Just the only problem is with us that we think that those services are free, and a lot of people don't realize that we are actually their product because they're selling our attention to the advertisers. But you know, they do their thing. They provide some services, and we can choose to use them or not. So I'm not a big hater of anyone. What I think is that it is very difficult to keep this size of companies in a truly unregulated world. So I think that actually the regulatory burden grows the size of the companies. And you could see that, for example, with internet service providers. So when internet began here, there were a lot of small ISPs that were providing villages, a few streets, and they provided internet access. And now when you have the censorship and surveillance and all these other things, it is very expensive to do it on a small scale. So you end up with, I don't know, 10 big companies that provide internet services. So, but for me, it's not a question of morality of the companies. It's more a question of why do we have to live in this centralized world. And from this perspective, I think decentralization will actually shrink the size of the companies.
Okay, so thank you very much for your questions. Our time is up. So once again, thank you, Juraj, for your presentation.
Thank you.